Hello, everyone. I am Dapper Dan Gavosden, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, but the annuals don't count. Or they do count.
Dan, what just happened here?
I just had a major brain fart, maybe I just kind of like revealed my secret there. I really don't think the annuals count.
I think this is an appropriate episode because this must be Dan from the multiverse. You are Earth 2 Dan Gavosden. And I am Earth 1 mischievous Mark Chinacchio. I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, and I also believe that the annuals don't count. So we're in
no.
agreement.
What have I done? I'm Variant Dan. That's who I am. Welcome everybody to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for this bonus episode of the Amazing Spider Talk.
Yes, Dan. Today on our show, we're going to be discussing the Spider-Man No Way Home teaser trailer that was released on August 24th, 2021. We'll be discussing our expectations going into the trailer, our thoughts after seeing it, some speculation for the film, the comics it's inspired by, and of course, some Easter eggs contained in that little teaser as well. Dan, it was so funny. I was away on vacation last week, and what was probably a normal time of day for you, it was kind of after my bedtime, and I woke up to use the restroom in the middle of the night, and I saw a text from Dan saying, "Did you see the trailer?" And I immediately looked at it and was totally captivated by it, while you were like, "I was eating dinner and saw it. What are you talking about, Mark?"
Yeah, this was really fun and a nice surprise. I mean, people have been talking about this thing for a while, and that's the big thing is this movie is coming up soon, Mark. I mean, what is it? In like a little over 3 months, we're getting this movie, and there's been really very little press about it. They are being very tight-lipped about it, and I think this trailer begins to get at why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when Loki finished on Disney Plus, for those of you who are watching those shows, there was kind of this consensus on social media, like, oh, clearly Marvel and Sony are just waiting for Loki to finish because of what had happened there. No spoilers, but like obviously there is some stuff that kind of leads into No Way Home as well, and then yet Loki ended in, what was that, June or July, early July?
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
It feels like a long time ago, for sure.
So we still had to wait another like month and a half or so for like you said, the movie comes out in December. So how do you want to get into this, Dan? I mean, like, obviously, like we just alluded to, there's been a lot of speculation about this movie, going back a year or so, and they were talking about casting news. I mean, the first big thing was like, oh, Alfred Molina is going to be it, and then it was like, oh, and it's Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are going to be in it, and Jamie Foxx, and possibly other actors from other Sony Spider-Man movies. Is this going to be kind of like Into the Spider-Verse live action? And I don't know if we really talked a lot about it, Dan, but I feel like you and I were probably aligned in being like, do we need a live action Into the Spider-Verse? I mean, Into the Spider-Verse is so perfect. Why are we going to ruin it with a live action thing with lots of Sony stuff? Some of it was good Sony stuff, and some of it wasn't so good. So what I mean, am I describing your feelings accurately, or am I putting words in your mouth here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's really accurate. I'll expand on that a little bit, which is, so many of these rumors about what is going to be in this movie have like suddenly been confirmed by this trailer that I don't even know what to believe anymore. Like there's been this long rumor about Charlie Cox's Daredevil showing up in this. And I've long been like, I really don't think that's going to happen. But you know what? I feel like there's a really good chance that could happen now. So I really think, with the casting of Jamie Foxx and Alfred Molina and everybody coming back and this trailer pretty much confirming it, I'm excited. I really think the sky's the limit for where they could go with this. But on the alternate, like you were saying, I don't even think my fear was necessarily like, hey, we don't need another Into the Spider-Verse movie. That's so perfect. I mean, if they got a good story, then great. It was more just like, I think it's weird to have Spider-Man media so dominated by multiverse stories. You've got these like even kid shows where there's Gwen and Miles, and I think that's great. But I do worry that the kind of everyman nature of Peter Parker gets a little bit lost if he's a character that's constantly hopping dimension to dimension. When it's like a special one-off thing, or Miles is getting to do it, fine. But I am a little bit precious of my Peter Parker, and these movies tend, way more people see these movies than will ever read the comics or watch the TV shows or enjoy any kind of Spider-Man media, I guess, except for maybe the video games. And so, like, when they suddenly get fixated on something like this, to me, it signals we're about to get decades of this character being associated with this thing, And that gave me some pause, which is like, that's not really how I see my Spider-Man. Like, if he wants to go and do it, great. Like, Spider-Man has gone into outer space a bunch in the comics, but like that doesn't remain like a key part of his character. Whereas I think this Spider-Verse thing, to me at least, seems to be occupying more and more space within the Spider-Man mythos, to the point that I'm like, okay, I'm worried that it threatens to dominate it. I will say, as we get into the trailer, that actually my concerns have been, I think, lessened considerably by this trailer. But I want to allow you to respond to what I just said first.
No, I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, certainly, like you said, the multiversal aspect. I mean, you can cite Into the Spider-Verse as the root of it, but I mean, actually, it probably goes back to Dan Slott's Spider-Verse story, where it really kind of took off, and like I felt certainly in the comics, where they really wanted to play up, the multiversal Spider-Man, whether it be Miles or Gwen or whoever. But in terms of the movie verse, I mean, I kind of liked how similar to the comics, as you just alluded to, like, yes, the big crossovers like Infinity War and Endgame were huge in scope and kind of cosmic, but the actual Spider-Man movies, putting aside, I know some people take umbrage with, just how influential Iron Man was in these most recent Spider-Man movies. But the thing is, like, I mean, even Iron Man, even Tony Stark is telling him, like, just be a neighborhood hero, and I feel
At
like
least for a
those
minute.
movies. What's that?
At least for a minute he did, before he suddenly forced him to wear the Avengers costume.
Right. That's very true. But I do feel like those first two movies felt fairly grounded.
Yes.
I mean, it was clearly, say what you will about the interpretation of the character. I felt that they got the grounded nature of his universe pretty down pat. I mean, the villain he fights in the first movie is the father of his prom date, and then in the second movie he's on a class trip and things are happening, and his world is turned upside down when his identity is revealed at the end of the second movie, which of course sets the stage for this movie. So, like these feel like very grounded, regular problems for a teenage superhero, and they kind of nailed that pretty well. So to kind of introduce this much higher concept, despite the fact that, and I'm trying not to spoil other stuff that Marvel's doing, but like, clearly the next phase, I guess it's phase 4, is going to be very focused on timelines and variants and multiverse stuff, and I granted, I was very excited by how Loki wrapped up and some of the reveals there, because I feel like it's going to set up some good storytelling with. But I don't know 100% how I feel about it in the realm of Spider-Man, for the reasons that you so elegantly outlined. It's like, is this how we want this character to be known to millions of people, because it's not really, when you think about the almost 60 years of history of this character, it's not really what his strong suit is.
So one of the things that I have to kind of like eat a little bit of crap about is, a couple weeks before they released this trailer, I'm trying to avoid the kind of like the big kind of gorilla or whatever elephant in the room, which is one more day and one moment in time. But until we talk about that, but CBR posted this article that said, one more day might be the solution that Marvel Studios is looking for Far From Home. And I like retweeted it and was like, no way in hell. And, like I'll eat a little bit of crap about that. In a weird way, that actually made me more confident in this trailer. So why don't we talk about the trailer itself? Mark, your initial reactions to seeing this thing. I mean, there's a lot to process here.
There is a lot to process, and like in the same vein, like I don't know if I have a definitive feeling about it, if that makes sense. I mean, it's because there's a lot going on, and I appreciated the conflict they were setting up. I mean, like, I'm glad that it wasn't like, oh, Peter's identity got revealed at the end of the last movie and that they were just going to drop it. Like, that's clearly going to be central to the conflict of this movie, which I think is respectable. Kind of seeing Doctor Strange be so prominent in it was interesting to me. Obviously, based on all the rumors, I was kind of looking for, okay, where are the Easter eggs or where are the clues? You know what I mean? Like, oh, like there's a guy in a suit slamming down papers when Peter is in the police station, and it's like, is that Charlie Cox? I mean, I don't think it was, but like, I think there were some people that think it might be. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, like, I'm definitely very intrigued by what this is, and of course, like, the ending of it and the nostalgia rush of seeing like Alfred Molina in the trailer, like, to me, like, that's the signal of, like, to go back to your earlier point, anything is possible with this thing. But yeah, when you see the sequence with Strange and Peter, and they're kind of riffing pretty closely to One More Day, I mean, I was kind of shocked. I mean, not like in a bad way per se, but just like, wow, okay, like it would be like turning on a trailer and seeing like clones, like, it's kind of, to me, like, wow, they're really going to do it. I mean, does that mean they're going to do it well or do it poorly? I don't know. It's a trailer. It's hard to, you can't really judge the quality of the movie from the trailer unless it was Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I know drove you crazy that I did it. But I was right. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what to feel except intrigue and curiosity and surprise. There was all of that to this, seeing that. What about you?
Like I've been saying on this stream, is that like this thing really, one, it made me excited to see the movie, which I think probably any Spider-Man trailer would. I mean, just seeing Spider-Man in live action is a thrill, regardless of the quality. Like, even the worst Spider-Man movie, I find fun things to discover about. And I mean, it's true for us. We're talking about a lot of bad Spider-Man comics week in and week out, but I still get excited about it. At least just to have a conversation about. But it really calmed me down in terms of my worries for a number of reasons. But the main one is, I like Far From Home, and I think it's probably like middle of the pack Spider-Man movie. But I felt like that movie lost a lot of like the elements that I associate with Spider-Man in it. I mean, it has the classic like, hey, I've got a double life thing going on, and I have to keep it hidden from everybody and keep my friends safe. and that's very Spider-Man. But otherwise, I felt like there's a lot of like elements to that movie where you could. It was more about like hero worship, which is not really like a theme that I associate with Spider-Man a lot. And so as much as I enjoyed so many parts of that movie, I didn't walk out of there going like that thing is like a beating heart of a Spider-Man movie. This, on the other hand, immediately it felt like we were getting a classic Spider-Man story, and people are going to be like, wait a minute, One More Day and One Moment in Time are not classic Spider-Man stories. But I will say about those stories is there is a core element to both of those stories that is very Spider-Man, which is you can't have it all. You got to choose one or the other, right?
Yeah.
And you got to, there's never a perfect happy ending, So here we're beginning to see his world fall apart when, I guess these two worlds, Peter and Spider-Man's world, collide. And there was one line from Doctor Strange in this trailer where he says, the problem is you're trying to live two lives. And I think a lot of these great stories, even the ones that we don't like the Clone Saga, are ostensibly wrestling with a way of like externalizing that conflict of Spider-Man. Like the clone thing is literally that, right? If you have a guy that can be Peter all the time and a guy that can be Spider-Man all the time, you could, have those lives. Like there's nothing core. Like why do we associate clones with Spider-Man? There's something about the character that screams clones. Well, the reason we do is because it's about, dual lives and, living multiple lives. So to me, like immediately those themes jumped out at me here. And I said, this looks very Spider-Man-y. Like Peter is going to be wrestling with problems that we associate with the character. And all the rest of it is like really cool, dazzling, fun things on top. But, how his being Spider-Man impacts his family and the choices he has to make. It reminds me a lot of the end of the very first Spider-Man movie where, Peter says to MJ, like, that he can't date her. The idea here that he's erasing all these people, their knowledge of him, but he has to include MJ and Ned. In my mind, at least, the end of this movie is him having to make a choice that might whisk him off to the Sonyverse, but a choice nevertheless. And when Spider-Man is making choices that are tough, that's a good Spider-Man story to me. And so that was my kind of like initial reaction was, cool, they're doing this, but even better, there's a Spider-Man story at the heart of this.
Yeah, and let's be clear here. The One More Day and One Moment in Time stuff. These are influences. They're not doing those
Right.
stories. It's clear. It's not. They're taking certain elements and adapting them to this universe and these characters. I've kind of loosely defended One More Day in the past on in different media and stuff, but I don't see the harm in doing it based on the premise that they've put forward in this trailer. You know what I mean? Again, it's a trailer, so let's see what it looks like in its full form. But there was nothing in this trailer that made me say, no, that doesn't make sense for these characters. Does that, do you understand what I'm trying to say with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It felt like a logical resource that he would go to. I think the same is true of like One More Day. It's like going to Doctor Strange and Iron Man and all the characters he does go there is something he would do. I don't really associate Mephisto with Spider-Man, but if that opportunity presented itself, he might consider it. That might be different than how I would choose to have him make that choice. But I also don't think Peter is a flawless character, as he's not presented here, right? Like, I think him interrupting Strange's spell seems to be like him making a mistake.
Yeah, I think I forgot who said it on Twitter, but someone making the point that Spider-Man basically breaks the multiverse because he won't shut up is a very Spider-Man thing.
That's a great point.
So definite kudos to that. Let's talk a little bit. I alluded to how at the end you see Alfred Molina as Doc Ock in the flesh. The other big rumor about this movie from the get-go is it's going to include, certainly multiple Spider-Man villains, and that makes, of course, people want to talk about the Sinister Six. In terms of the Easter eggs in this movie, we caught what? Doc Ock is not. I wouldn't even call him an Easter egg. He's there. But there are bolts of lightning to indicate Electro. There was a sandstorm for Sandman. You saw, and I saw other people point this out, but like I still am having a hard time seeing it. The lizard shows up in the flesh in this movie, in this trailer, right?
I mean, it's not like very obvious, and I can't even guarantee that it is the lizard, but you can hear this roar like the lizard, and there's like a kind of like hunched, shadowy, almost lizard-like character that Spider-Man like kind of turns around really quickly, and you see it through a portal. So, I also think it would be easy to bring the lizard back because like you could just ignore Reese Ifans and just bring in a CGI character, and I don't think anybody would really mind all that much.
Right.
If I'm looking at characters to bring in, I mean, maybe it's the Scorpion. They did set that up. It'd be nice to see that paid off. But
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about this. I imagine these are like variant versions of these characters in some way. I mean, if you look at Otto, the interesting thing about him is that his there's a red light on his tentacles, which is like the color that they are when the chip is in control. So like
Right.
this is like an Otto before he broke free from the tentacles controls. I mean, most of them have died, but like the lightning from Electro is yellow instead of blue.
Right. Blue.
So,
Yeah.
like I'm guessing these are going to be variant versions of these characters. But I mean, how do you feel about seeing the Sinister Six? I mean, do you think it's going to happen for sure?
I mean, I'm still not 100% sold that that's what they're doing. Because we kind of had this a little bit in Far From Home. Sorry, I'm confusing my home, with the elements, with the
Right, the
elementals.
elementals, yeah.
Like, oh, it's Sandman and Hydra Man, but it really wasn't. You know, you know what I mean? Like, so we'll see. I mean, like, I also don't think. I mean, and we didn't mention it, but also we saw a Goblin Bomb, or a Pumpkin Bomb, if you will, with kind of a sinister laugh to indicate the Green Goblin is somehow involved. And I also agree with you. Outside of Alfred Molina, we really don't know for certain that anyone who's portrayed these characters in the past is going to necessarily reprise them here. Kind of the beauty of doing a story about the multiverse and different timelines is you can do whatever the heck you want here. You know what I mean? You want to right the wrongs of the past, you can do that. I mean, it so happens that, and I don't know if this is a controversial opinion or not, but to me, like Alfred Molina's Doc Ock was the best cinematic Spidey villain that we've gotten so far. So like bringing him in the flesh, no brainer if he wants to do it. But with the others, you want to change the look, the actor, whatever, you can do it. Like it's a variant, like there's nothing, you're not beholden to anything if it's a variant. You can get an alligator to be one of these characters, as we learned in Loki.
Well, I mean, there have been casting rumors around every character that appeared in the trailer. So, if rumors are to be believed, which at this point I'm kind of in the camp of believing them. Jamie Foxx has already been brought back, and same with Willem Dafoe and all of the actors, of those movies. They're more confirmed than Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are. And I think, at least from my mind, there's a pretty safe bet we're going to get those characters. But there's one detail that throws me off a little bit. If you look at Peter in the scene where he, at the end, is looking at the woman in the car, and then Otto bursts out of the thing, and Peter changes into a different costume. He's wearing the exact same suit that Peter wore in Spider-Man 3. So whether we're going to get a like a version of like McGuire and Garfield, or Peter's mind is gonna like occupy their bodies, and he's gonna to live through them, and maybe when they look in the reflection, you see, the original
Yeah.
actor or something. Like I could see them doing that and having it be a very minor cameo thing, and have Peter literally living out the lives of all these different people, because like Otto sees, Tom Holland's Peter and says hello, Peter, or at least we assume, because they could be manipulative editing.
Right. Maybe
So
it's a
I
trailer.
don't know. My guess right now is actually I think he's going to occupy their role in their various universes. But we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of your original question, I mean, if it is the Sinister Six, I mean, again, it just comes down to how they do it. Like people want to say, oh, Spider-Man 3 or Amazing Spider-Man 2 had too many villains, and that's what brought them down. But I mean, the fact of the matter is those are the two weakest movies of the Spider-Man franchise for a lot of other reasons. It's not just because of the number of villains. So, and
Right. And
actually,
Into the Spider-Verse shows you can have a half dozen villains and not even blink.
right, exactly. It just depends on how they're used, and like I also maintain, like, at least with Spider-Man 3, certain villains were used well. Like I thought Sandman was a stunning cinematic visual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I liked Thomas Hayden Church's performance. So, um,
And that's all they would
anyways,
have to be here is almost a stunning visual. I mean, we've already
yeah,
introduced, if audiences are familiar with these characters, bring them in and let's just have fun with them. Like, I think that's
exactly.
actually the trick. The problem with, at least in my opinion, the problem with the too many villains thing is they're all operating on an outdated mode of like introducing villains into movies, which is you cast the mega star actor, and then in order to justify the millions of dollars that you're paying them, they need to split the screen time with the main character, to some major degree, right? And so you can't just have them be a bit role that's just introduced without an origin story. So when you have like, a movie with a ton of origin stories and all these conflicting protagonists or antagonists, then your movie gets really bogged down. Whereas Into the Spider-Verse doesn't even like bother to introduce 90% of the villain there. They just assume you know who Kingpin is, even,
Yeah,
which I think is
yeah,
a fairly bit of a reach for, most audiences. I mean, his design tells you everything you need to know. But, most people, I would dare say, in average world don't know who Kingpin is. So, or the non-comics world, if you will. So I'm hopeful that like they can kind of bring some of these characters in and just like, whatever, these guys, let's just have fun. And the trailer, I think, is like a great example of that.
definitely. You want to talk about the Slack, and then we can get back to some more trailer reaction, Dan?
Yeah, sure. So or go ahead, Mark.
Hundreds of listeners like you hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans on Slack. The amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you can jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more. I bet you could even talk about trailers there, right, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a whole movies column and an MCU spoilers column. So yeah, like there we've been discussing like, this trailer, but also this week we had a really fun like breakout of everybody listing their top 5 Spider-Man artists of all time. And we cataloged it and came up with the ultimate list of who is the most beloved of all. So that was a lot of fun. So yeah, if you want to join this awesome Spider-Man community, just follow the link in the description and be sure to say hi. And once you're there, let us know what you thought of this episode and the trailer yourself. We'd love to hear what you got going on. All right, Mark, so let's talk about some of our expectations for the movie. Do you have like any theories about what you think is actually going on here, or what kind of story it's going to be?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I think one thing that's definitely worth talking about here is, and again, I've seen other fans on social media speculate about this, but Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange here, not to play off his name, but he sure seemed to be acting strangely, and maybe not totally himself here. I mean, well, first of all, the Sanctum Sanctorum on the inside was like an ice castle. So I don't know if he's become like, the princess from Frozen or something. But what's going on? What is your takeaway here from Doc Strange in this trailer, Dan?
Okay, well, I'm going to get it out there, and I'm going to say it so that you don't have to. And I'm not saying I agree with this, but I just want to get it out there, right? There's a moment where Spider-Man is walking through a crowd of people as Peter Parker, and there's a sign behind him that says, "The Devil in Disguise," and with horns. And if we're doing one moment in time, one more day, Mephisto's not very far behind. Now, everybody has been saying Mephisto's going to show up in every TV show. Like, people are just like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the one where he finally shows up. And we've been proven, our patience will pay off. And maybe that's Doctor Strange. Maybe he's Mephisto, and maybe he turned it into an ice palace so as to not alert everybody about the flames of hell. And he certainly lights that fire really quickly by pointing at it. I could pick this apart all day and tell you that this is not Doctor Strange and it's Mephisto or any other number of imposters. I don't know that I believe that. I think he's acting kind of strange, but mostly because I think it's edited kind of weird for the trailer.
Right.
I don't know. If you were to really ask me, I would assume that he's going to kind of play the Morpheus role in this movie, which is first I think Spider-Man's probably going to try to break into Doctor Strange's place and steal some magic thing that ends up causing a big mess. Even in just that image where Doctor Strange is blasting Peter's spirit out of his body, you can see that Spider-Man is holding some kind of device. I wonder if he's going to open up the mirror dimension like we see a little bit of in the trailer. And then Doctor Strange is going to take him under his wing, teach him something about the multiverse, and help him with this spell that then suddenly goes wrong. There's that great image of the train that is splitting off into all different tracks. And to me, that reminds me of the multiverse timeline that was introduced in Avengers Endgame, where they talk about the splintering timeline. I wonder if he's going to use the train to teach Spider-Man about that. That's what I think is going to happen. And then Peter's going to get lost in the multiverse, and it's going to put him through a bunch of trials as he tries to get back home, for whatever that means. I don't know. Some people are saying Doctor Strange is the villain. It's certainly possible. But to me, I don't know. I think what we're going to get, if you were to ask me, is I think we're going to get an Amazing Spider-Man 500 happy birthday thing, where it ultimately comes down to Peter living all these different lives, fighting all these different villains, and having to make a decision about hey, I've been through absolute hell. You can either choose one. You can be Peter Parker or you can be Spider-Man. You got to sacrifice something. And I think that's where this is headed, if you were to ask me.
The point seems to be, Dan, whether we're talking about Happy Birthday or One More Day or, not One Moment in Time, but the Spider-Man Doctor Strange team ups. We're getting, it seems to be that we are mining a lot of J. Michael Straczynski's run on Amazing Spider-Man, which is interesting to me because not to take anything away from the classic stories of Ditko and Lee and Ramita, but but let's be honest. That's generally where the cinematic universe has kind of mined its content from. It's the OG Spider-Man stuff, and there's been very little from the modern classic stories. So that's kind of exciting to me that they're looking at different source material. We're not going to get either way. We're not getting the same old here. This is going to probably be the most unique Spider-Man movie by a mile, which is exciting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you know what? We're doing the Spider-Verse. How great would it be if Moreland just suddenly showed up? I don't think it's going to happen.
Off screen.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see that character get a bigger treatment enough to really be accepted into the Spider-Man, major rogues gallery, because I don't think I've ever seen him adapted into television or anything like that. So
Yeah,
I
no
don't think you
cartoons or
skip past
anything.
TV to the movie, but you never know.
Now, Dan, I know when it comes to the world of Easter eggs and Spider-Man movies, you are the expert. Were there any Easter eggs that jumped out immediately at you that you want to just get out there and flex your muscles about?
Well, I'll start off by saying that, like, I didn't really intend to pick this apart because I had pitched doing an article on the Easter eggs for the Hollywood Reporter, where I normally do my articles on Easter eggs. And Aaron, my editor there, told me, like, we're really busy right now. We're not going to be able to pull this off, and funds are low. So why don't we wait for the actual movie? And I was like, totally fine. Makes sense to not split stuff up. But, looking back at Far From Home, I remembered that there were Easter eggs in that trailer that weren't in the actual movie. They like created
Hmm.
Easter eggs just for the trailer. And so I was like, I kind of want to document this at least for myself so that I can like
Right.
go back and compare like, hey, are they like just as a function of the industry? Because clearly they know people are going to scrub these things for Easter eggs enough that it gets people go see the movie multiple times. Like it's a new way for like they're doing it to make money, right? Like I mean, it also probably is
Right.
fun, but they know that
It's a
people are
good way to
looking for this
engage with the
now.
movie. That's the bottom line. People can engage with it more this way.
Right. I love it. And I enjoy doing it too. Like when I went and saw Into the Spider-Verse a couple months early and came out with like 100 Easter eggs, I felt like a champ. Uh, so for this one, I was like, okay, let me see what I can find. And so I just kind of casually posted a bunch of them on Twitter, and probably in a really sloppy fashion. I think I broke my thread a number of times and had to repost things. But then it suddenly got like gaining traction and it started to go like mini viral. And that was a kind of new
Mm.
experience for me. Enough that like Ryan Airy, who does the Screen Crush videos on all the Marvel stuff, if you watch his stuff, he's brilliant. I don't know how he does
Hmm.
the stuff that he does. He suddenly gave me a shout out. Like I found out a bunch of things that he didn't see in the video without me even like interacting with him. So that was cool. And he and I have since talked, and I invited him to come join us on the show when the movie comes out. So I think that could be a lot of fun. But it was weird. My phone was just going nuts all day. I think I had like 500 retweets on something. It was just crazy. So that was fun. So in terms of things that I saw, I mean, I think a lot of the stuff is really obvious. We talked about, but there's a couple of fun things. So one, when Peter and MJ are on the roof at the beginning, you can see Ditko's name in graffiti on the back of the roof, and I thought that was really
Hmm.
neat. And then when Peter is on the bridge at the end, one of the things you really have to kind of keep out for, they like to hide stuff in
Hmm.
license plates. And at first, they
Right.
only released this thing in 720. So it was a really low quality thing. And I have a higher quality version now that I'm hoping to scrub a little bit more. But the license plates usually hide stuff. But in this case, it was a taxi cab number, which was 1228, which is, if I'm correct, it's December 28th, which is Stan
Hmm.
Lee's birthday.
So that's
So
going to be the new Stan Lee cameo, a
I
license plate
guess,
with his birthday.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So that was cool. And then the other one, with of a little more substance, this thing opened with like Spider-Man and MJ on a bridge, and
Yes.
I think that's all part of the sequence where they're like escaping the press, or it's like a dream sequence where he's remembering being chased by the press after he was outed by J. Jonah Jameson, who I imagine is going to have a really small role in this movie. I was hoping for a bigger role, but I think he's probably just going to kind of occupy the role he did in the last one. But it immediately sends up red flags, and the thing that was curious to me is the bridge where Otto breaks out of, like it shows multiple times, like where the bridge is to, and the bridge is to the George Washington Bridge, which Mark is what,
Well,
or what isn't it?
right. I mean, it's technically the bridge where Gwen Stacy was killed, but visually it was the Brooklyn Bridge, and then it's been retconned. But But yes, George Washington Bridge has a very significant role in the world of Spider-Man for sure.
Yeah. So, look, it might not be anything, but when I saw that, I was like, let me red flag that because, um, although the bridge that they're on at the start, I believe, is like the Queensboro Bridge because you can see
Yes.
the cars that go off to Roosevelt Island
Yes.
there. So you can rest assured that MJ is going to make it out of the first 5 minutes of the movie.
I would think so, and certainly off the Queensboro. I mean, we can't talk about the George Washington Brooklyn Bridge,
But
which for
that
people who are unfamiliar with their geography are on completely opposite ends of New York City.
the thing about that though, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? And this would kind of be my final thought on the trailer. The thing about the trailer that also makes me happy is it seems to be some of the biggest consequences that we've seen for the character yet. I mean, even if it's just implying the death of a loved one or something, but there's a number of instances of a shot of like Peter and Aunt May on the couch and like looks like someone storming into the home, and there's like Happy Hogan in like a car with a bunch of like laser sights and things, and it seems like these characters are going to be in real like in a threat situation directly related to like Peter. Like if Peter wasn't in Europe when they went to Europe, I think Mysterio is still kind of doing what he's doing. Maybe not quite in the same way, but this seems to be something that like really lies like that. Being Spider-Man has consequences, and I don't know that it's something we've really seen for the character yet. So far, he seems to be like kind of inserting himself into problems, and this seems to be a problem that's like arising of the state of like who he is. And I think that's an important development for this character in that he doesn't have Uncle Ben to make that an intrinsic part of the character, at least that we know of. Do I think they're going to address Uncle Ben in this movie? I don't know. Maybe Tobey Maguire's character brings it up, but like, at least we're seeing something that says like, "Hey, being Spider-Man is dangerous," and that's interesting to me at the very least.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And um, yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add to you on that. I mean, this again, like this seems like at the very least this is going to be fun. It's going to be different. It's going to be interesting. I can't say for any certainty if it's going to be any good. But I'm excited for this. This was a like, after all this time waiting and waiting and waiting, I was legitimately like, oh my goodness, they finally did it. And it looks really interesting. So, color me ready to see this movie in December. Not that I wouldn't want to see it anyway, but this definitely elevates it significantly.
And please, 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 if this isn't Doctor Strange and he's like already lost in the multiverse of madness, can we get Spider-Man to show up in the Doctor Strange movie? I just want Sam Raimi to direct Spider-Man again. That's a
Yeah,
desire of mine.
great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think Mark, I don't know if when we're gonna check in on this again before the movie is released, but I think if there's like enough interesting things to talk about, we'll find a way to talk about it. But at the very least, join us for our review in a few months of Spider-Man: No Way Home. Maybe the end of this trilogy. Who knows? I don't even think the executives know. So we'll ride that roller coaster too. But
Say money
yeah,
talks, Dan.
yeah, exactly. Hey, speaking of which, if you find this show entertaining and valuable, please consider supporting us. Recommend Amazing Spider Talk to a friend, and if you're able, become a member of our Patreon.
Yeah, we can only bring you this content with the support of our Patreon members, and we owe the show's success to every single one of them. We are constantly making exclusive content for our members.
Yeah, so why not take $3.99? That's the price of a new comic, or actually, like, it's less than a price of a Sinister War, and put it towards a month subscription to support the show and start receiving our Patreon content. That way, you'll hear our Patreon exclusive review podcasts on every new issue of Amazing Spider-Man the same week it comes out, instead of waiting for it to arrive in our public podcasting feed.
And if you contribute $10 a month, you gain access to exclusive artwork from famous Spider-Man artists commissioned exclusively for our members. This season, we'll be mailing out a print by artist Ron Friends. He's created a lost page of The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man for us, which was inked by Brett Breeding. And the page depicts Tim and Spidey sharing laughs over Tim's Spider-Man comics collection. Plus, every episode, we release a new episode-specific desktop background created for us by artist Nick Cagnetti for our patrons to enjoy.
Yeah, but we know it's a hard time for everybody, as it is for us too. You know, the world is going through a lot right now. So we just really appreciate anyone who supports the show just by listening and especially by sharing. But if you have the means, please join our Patreon to support the continued existence of our show. Just follow the link in the description. And again, a thank you to all the members who already make our show possible.
But alas, Dan, it is that time for all good things to come to an end. So, of course, we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, this episode was edited by Rick Koch with production support from Andy Myers. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Friends, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser. And our theme songs were produced by Rylan Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider Match. So, Mark, until we learn to hypnotize women with our spider powers, what's our motto?
Of course, that motto is, with great podcasts, there must also come the amazing Spider Talk.
Too many who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left out to tangle. In 1962, last Wednesday's afternoon, they'll binge